We'll go ahead and begin. We got a somewhat of a lengthy agenda, but we also have a work session immediately after the agenda meeting. The items which we will be reviewing today will be formally acted upon next Tuesday, July 2nd. Wow. We'll be in the second half of the year already, but we're already maybe in triple digits before then. So, but we'll call upon our city manager, Mr. Bill Burrow, to review those action items. Bill?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Your first item is consider Resolution R24-126, a resolution confirming the appointment of Latasha Harris to position 5 on the Hot Springs Housing Authority Board of Commissioners, and our city clerk, Harmony Morrissey, will discuss this item.
Thank you. Mrs. Latasha Harris has served as Position 5 Commissioner on the Housing Authority since November 17th of 2015. Housing Commissioners serve for 5-year terms. Her current term will expire on August 16th of this year. When a term of office of a Housing Authority Commissioner expires or vacancy occurs, the Commission appoints a successor to fill the vacancy, subject to confirmation by the governing body of the city. The Housing Authority Commission submitted resolution number 3266, reappointing Ms. Harris to position 5 via email on June 17th of this year. The Commission respectfully requests that the City of Hot Springs Board of Directors confirm this appointment at their July 2nd regularly scheduled meeting. That concludes my report.
Any questions of Harmony on this item? Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. Harmony, was that a unanimous recommendation?
I believe I just have,
Of memory, I think it was.
Great.
I just have the resolution. Let me see if the resolution says. The resolution just states that they had appointed her. It doesn't say what the vote was, but I can ask for that.
Okay, thank you.
Next item.
Next item is consider Resolution R24-127, a resolution authorizing out-of-state travel for certain members of the Board of Directors to represent the City of Hot Springs and Hanamaki, Japan through the Sister City Program as required by Resolution number 8496 as amended and for other purposes. Mayor, on this particular item, I had spoken with Mary Zunick, who is coordinating that September trip, so I needed to get this on this board's agenda if any board members were interested in attending that. I've heard from several other board members, I think all of you actually, that there is no interest in attending this year, just due to other obligations, but I still had that on the agenda for review.
Any questions from the board? Director Holliday?
I do, and I don't know if this is something that we can do here, or if we would need to, if I would need to make an amendment then, but I'd like to see us take those funds and put it towards a couple of staff people to go. We have great staff that I think could learn a lot over there, and they could learn from us, so I'm not sure. You guys will have to tell me if we need to keep it on and then amend it then, or if we can change the actual item to allocate our board fund over to staff travel. How does that work at this point?
Well, if you're wanting something on the agenda, this is your agenda meeting, so you could direct staff to prepare the necessary resolution to take care of that.
But that's not required to come to the board.
Is it?
Just the budget adjustment, because
budget-
it's within a different, but if it's already within their budget, it wouldn't require that.
I doubt that departments have that kind of travel expense in their budgets.
Right.
It would take a transfer from a budgeted amount in the board's basic department over to whichever department we choose for staff. If that's a utilities, there won't be a movement. It'll come from the utilities itself. If it's a general fund, then we would transfer from the board over into that particular department. And really, I mean, with this, I'm not sure we'd even need, since it's general fund, that we would even need to make an adjustment. We would just purchase those airline tickets or that trip out of that reserve directly. that we could do that as well. So probably remove this item from the agenda.
Okay. Item will be removed.
And then we don't need to have, you're saying we don't need any additional communication, okay, or any additional,
B, what do you think on that?
There's no harm in having one.
Yeah, there's nothing that prevents that, no. That's fine.
Okay, so prepare one for, city
Budget transfer.
staff. Authorizing city staff with appropriate funding.
All right, next we have consider resolution R-24-128, a resolution assigning all non-uniform public safety dispatch positions a pay grade on the general pay plan for city employees and amending resolution numbers 10346 and 10442 accordingly. And our police chief, Harverton, is here to discuss the item. Chief?
Thank you, sir. The Hot Springs Police Department Communications Center, or dispatch, is integral to all police, fire, EMS, and emergency 911 calls and operations. They perform all types of critical functions in support of every level of public safety operations for the first responders of this community. The Communications Center has a total staffing allocation of 17 personnel, consisting of dispatcher trainee, level 1 dispatcher, level 2 dispatcher, lead dispatcher, and dispatch supervisor. Approximately 8 years ago, the current HSPD dispatch table was adopted in order to create a step plan and career growth for dispatch personnel. However, with the adoption of the new City of Hot Springs employee pay table, the dispatch pay table was not amended and is now inconsistent with the general pay table for all other non-uniform city employees. When the Board of Directors passed Resolutions 10346 on December 19 of 23 approving the 2024 employee pay tables, the intention was to ensure positions performing similar work was essentially the same level of complexity, responsibility, knowledge, skills, and ability are classified together, and to provide salaries commensurate with the assigned duties, provide recognizable compensational growth, justifiable pay differential, and support wages with relevant labor markets. The general pay tables approved in Resolution 10346 successfully reflect this work and achieve that goal. The public safety pay tables, however, have necessitated further examination. Resolution number 10442 amended Resolution 10346 by separating the public safety pay table into 3 separate pay tables for police, fire, and dispatch. However, ongoing review and implementation has highlighted the need for an additional improvement that would be moving all non-uniform personnel, specifically dispatch, to the general pay plan. This change would honor the intent behind the updated pay scales and create parity with other city employees and allow dispatch the same job growth and career development or advancement. The recommendation is to move the 17 authorized dispatch personnel positions, who are all non-uniform employees of the Hot Springs Police Department, to the general pay plan with all other non-uniform city employees. This change will eliminate the need for a separate pay table for this group of non-uniform employees and hopefully reduce the need for continued overtime to fill the positions. The updated job descriptions showing the associated pay grades on the general pay plan have been included. Moving forward, there would no longer be a need for a position titled dispatcher trainee, and such personnel would be hired on as a level 1 dispatcher. All level 1 dispatchers would undergo a set training period. The linked spreadsheet explains how the proposed changes would impact the current subject personnel. Level 1 dispatchers would be a pay grade 12, level 2 pay grade 13, lead dispatcher a grade 15, and dispatch supervisor as a general pay grade 16. With the current staffing level of 15 personnel, the cost of this proposal for the rest of the year would be $29,189.49 or $68,993.34 annually. The potential annual cost at full staffing of 17 personnel would be $81,644. That would include retirement taxes and all other benefits. The proposed date of implementation for this action will be July 20th of 2024. This will require no budget amendment for the rest of 2024 to accomplish this, and all documentation is included in your packets, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions of Chief? Chief, was your report today, was that the same basically that during our work session, or was any information altered from the work session to
No,
today?
sir, it's all consistent with the information you received during the work session.
Very good. Any further questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consider Resolution R24-129, a resolution authorizing the acceptance of certain energy efficiency conservation block grants funds from the U.S. Department of Energy for the purchase and installation of 2 electric vehicle charging stations, and Deputy City Manager Spicer will present.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. These funds come to us from the bipartisan infrastructure law. That was a pretty good tranche of money that came to the Department of Energy, and as part of that, they received funding for this energy efficiency conservation block grant, which Department of Energy has had this program for a long time. The City of Hot Springs was provided a formula allocation of $76,460. Excuse me. And with that funding, the Department of Energy offers equipment rebate vouchers, so you're not having to go through the full federal grant management process. It provides a little bit of a streamlined process to use these funds for eligible activities. And in doing so, the Complete Streets team recognized the need for some electric vehicle charging stations and identified the newly acquired Church Street lot at 408 Malvern Avenue as a good location for this project to be carried out. So at this point, city staff has done a bit of pre-application work, take part in National League of Cities, had several training opportunities to assist us in kind of project development and going through how best to use these funds. It's not a tremendous amount of money, so this $76,460 will cover the complete kind of turnkey project with the installation of 2 electrical vehicle charging stations and all the site prep work that goes with it. So I feel this is probably the best use of the limited funding that we received, and it's certainly much quicker, much more streamlined than your typical federal grant process. But of course, you still have all the grants and assurances that you have to follow, but it does provide you with a little bit more straightforward path to use these funds. And I entertain any questions if you have them.
Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. Lance, were you saying that the grant is ready to be accepted by the city or ready to be sent off? So the grant was already put in, applied for, accepted, and you just
We're
need
at the
board
final
approval?
stages, yeah.
Okay.
Just needs board approval to have the city manager sign off on the agreement.
Would there be any cost to the city for the site prep or maintaining of these charging stations at 408 Malvern,
The only
monthly or yearly?
the only funding that would come from the city funds would be for any type of the electricity that's needed and any type of things that are outside of the warranty for these particular charging stations. If anything were to go wrong, break or anything like that, I mean, that's not covered by warranty, that would of course be borne by the city.
What could be not covered by warranty?
Generally speaking, these will be very, very similar to the ones we have in Hill Wheatley Plaza, and they've been there about 3 or 4 years, I think. And so far, we haven't had any issues with them. But if there are any type of malfunctions that go with them, broken handles, etc., those may be things due to misuse or anything like that. Those would probably be things that would not be covered under warranty.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Director Holliday?
Thanks. I'm not super familiar with the ones at Hill Wheatley, but typically the charters you pay as you go. So where does that, I'm assuming that's money that comes to the city, like how does that cycle? Is that just go into a fund that sort of so we can fix things later on, or how do we get paid for the electricity, or is it just a service we provide?
Well, currently our thought to encourage use, this is going to end up being one of the pay lots. So our thought, staff's thought, was to charge for the time that they're in that particular space, but not charge for the power that's going into the car.
Okay.
That's currently how we have it set up, but certainly can change that if that's the board's pleasure.
No, well, I mean, I've seen all different kinds. I was just curious because it's not something that I remember us talking about before, and I was curious how the money came in and where it landed.
The ones we actually have down in Hill Wheatley, because that's over on the Hill Wheatley lot, all of that is going through Visit Hot Springs. So we don't have those. This will be the first ones, I think, that we'll actually have experience with on this side of the street.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Lance, you said 2 charging stations. Does each station have two units?
Four total charging ports.
Are these, if there's a criticism on the ones at Hill Wheatley Plaza, is that they're very slow charging. Is this a faster item, or?
These are the same level 2 chargers. And part of the reasoning behind, using these chargers, generally they take 4 to 10 hours if you're looking for a full charge, depending on the size of the vehicle, was to more or less encourage people to shop, dine. Whenever you have those faster chargers, like the gentleman that is on North Park Avenue, those, I think you can get a full charge in about 15 or 20 minutes. So the thinking was to kind of offer it as an amenity to the parking program, as opposed to kind of a utilitarian, get your car charged and move on.
Does Tesla have a program where they'll help fund installation of charging stations?
They did. I don't know if they still have that. That's how a lot of the hotels actually implemented those charging stations, because most hotels, of course, have Tesla charging stations. A lot of the car dealerships do as well. I don't know if that program's still in place or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Significant cost difference between the level 2 and the fast charge. Next, we have consider resolution R-24-130, a resolution extending an administrative services agreement with West Central Arkansas Planning and Development District, Inc. for administration of our CDBG program and funds, and our Planning and Development Director, Kathy Selman, will discuss this item. Kathy?
Thank you. As an entitlement city for the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development Community Development Block Grant, CDBG, the city is required to administer funds, engage citizen participation, establish goals for Board of Directors approval, and document and report progress and compliance to HUD. The annual CDBG grants for the city of Hot Springs average about $400,000, and this year's grant is $401,437. An administrative services agreement has been prepared that provides administration and public participation at a cost of $65,000. This is within the HUD eligible cap for administration, which is 20% of the total grant. So this does meet that limit. We have been working with West Central Arkansas Planning and Development District to provide this service, and found that it has been satisfactory.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have consider resolution R-24-131, a resolution authorizing an agreement with Stevens, Inc. for bond underwriting services for the city of Hot Springs, Arkansas. And our finance director, Karen Scott, will discuss. Karen?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Cities may choose to finance capital projects by issuing bonds. Municipal bonds typically are brought to market through an underwriting process. As part of this process, a municipal securities dealer, or an underwriter, purchases newly issued securities from the issuer and sells them to investors. The underwriter is part of the city's financing team that works with other team members to finalize the financing plan, develop offering documents, prepare for any rating agency and investor presentations, market the bond offering to investors, price the bonds, and close the transaction. Every few years, the City of Hot Springs solicits new statements of qualifications for bond underwriting services. In May, we issued request number SOQ number 24043, soliciting bond underwriting services for the City of Hot Springs. 4 responses were received from Carty & Company, Essex Securities LLC, Raymond James & Associates, Inc., and Stevens, Inc. The 4 responders were rated and ranked, and Stevens, Inc. received the highest rating. A notice of intent to award has been issued, and the protest period closes June 26th. The city will negotiate with Stevens to determine the proper and fair underwriter compensation for each series of bonds to be issued as they occur in conjunction with the city's municipal advisor prior to pricing each particular series of bonds. Compensation under this contract will be limited solely to the sale of bonds. This includes the underwriter's discount or placement fee, as well as customary costs Stevens incurs directly related to the bond sale. Stevens will pay all travel, phone, and computer expense. All other costs relating to the issuance of bonds, such as bond counsel and trustee fees, well as bond insurance reserve policy premiums, if any, will be paid from bond proceeds or other existing funds. Stevens will be paid only upon the successful sale of the bonds to be issued by the City of Hot Springs and from the proceeds of the sale. If for whatever reason the proposed bonds are not issued or sold, Stevens agrees to make no claim for compensation for its services provided in anticipation of the issuance and sale of the City of Hot Springs bonds. This contract shall be effective from the date of its approval by both parties until December 31st, 2028, unless further extended by mutual agreement of both parties. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of the board? No question. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, you have an item of old business. It's considered Resolution R-24-106, a resolution awarding a bid to Environmental Protection Associates, Inc. for the abatement and removal of asbestos and lead paint at 228 Orange Street, and for the purposes in the amount of $26,000. And again, Ms. Selman.
Thank you. This is a consideration of a low bid to perform abatement and removal of asbestos and lead-based paint at 228 Orange Street. This was an item that was continued for about 6 weeks to allow Mr. Howell to come up with a plan for how he might make this activity happen on his own. We received a communication from Mr. Howell yesterday that he is no longer an owner in any sense. He has told us there is no ownership interest at all from him or the LLC with which he was associated. So Mr. Howell is no longer in the picture. The property is owned of record by Monolith Properties.
So does this item need to be acted upon, taken off, or?
Yes,
no? I'm
yes,
sorry.
Mayor, right.
It still stays.
The issue that was tabled was whether or not to award the bid. And so we could keep that on the agenda, and the board can decide next Tuesday whether or not to award the bid for asbestos removal.
Any additional questions, Director Webb?
Thank you, Mayor. If no owner's present with this, so there isn't going to be any highly likelihood of anybody speaking against this particular resolution, would it be possible to have it on consent, or do we have to?
No, sir, because it was tabled, it must be on old business and be taken from the table.
Okay.
Director Trustee?
Thank you, Mayor. And just for clarification, it's Roger Powell instead of Howell. Did you say, were you
I'm sorry, I
Powell?
can't hear.
P-O-W?
Yes, yes, Powell.
It's
Yeah.
Powell instead of Howell. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes.
Any further questions?
Next-
Thank you.
Thank
Next,
you.
you'll have your first item of new business. Consider Resolution R-24-132, a resolution declaring a certain structure located at 307 Euclid Street a nuisance and condemning same pursuant to Title 17 of the Hot Springs Code. And our Chief Building Official, Mike Scott, will discuss the item. Mike.
Good afternoon, thank you. We propose condemnation for the purpose of demolishing and clearing a vacant single-family residential structure at 307 Euclid Street. The structure has been inspected on a number of occasions, has been deemed unsafe for habitation because of extensive structural damage that poses a public health and safety risk. On December 2020, the Planning Department filed a lien on the property because we cut the grass and cleaned the carport for an amount of $144.98, and that is still outstanding. April of '23, a vacant structure notice was issued to the owners to repair holes in the exterior walls caused by rot and visible termite damage. The roof has a hole in it and the interior ceilings, and also we needed them to secure the doors and windows. A second vacant structure notice was issued to the owners in August of '23, and again, a third one in January of 2024. In April of 2024, a limited title search was requested, came back, and both owners have been notified, and the proof of service was returned signed by them. In May of 2006, a notice of board meeting was attached to the structure. Due to the extent of the deterioration, the inability or unwillingness of the property owner to make repairs to stabilize the structure, and having no reasonable alternative, the structure should be raised and removed. The taxes are currently current on that property. So.
Any questions of Mike on this item? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next will be your first ordinance of the evening. It's consider ordinance O-2419, an ordinance amending the zoning map from R4 residential to CTR commercial transition for Lot 1, Block 6 of McCowan subdivision, amending the future land use plan map designation from residential to convenience commercial, and for other purposes. And again, Ms. Salmon.
Thank you. The applicant is property owner, Mr. John Stanley. The request is for commercial transitional zoning on approximately 10,600 square foot lot located on Cypress and Butterfield Streets. It is zoned R4 at this time. It's in District Number 1. There is approximately 56 feet of street frontage on Cypress, as well as on Rosewall Street, and approximately 190 feet of frontage on Cypress and Butterfield Streets. So this is a fairly limited size of lot for R4 development. If rezoned to CTR, commercial transitional, this property would be allowed the complete list of permitted and conditional uses detailed in the table of permitted uses. On June 13th, Planning Commission held a duly advertised meeting, called for testimony, and considered the record, voting 9-0 to recommend that the Board of Directors approve an ordinance amending the zoning map from R4 residential to CTR commercial transition for Lot 1, Block 6, McCown subdivision, and amending the future land use plan map designation from residential to convenience commercial, because the change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning, and to amend the future land use plan map by designating the subject property convenience commercial.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item is consider ordinance O-2420, an ordinance amending the zoning map from R2 suburban residential to C3 office neighborhood commercial for 1.25 acres located at 209 Carpenter Dam Road, and for other purposes. Kathy?
Thank you. The applicant here was Ms. Patricia Welch, representing the estate of Clara S. Rouge. And subsequent to the application, Mr. Alkesh Modi purchased the property from the estate, and that was in May. The application, therefore, has been amended with his signature, and he desires to continue to seek the C3 zoning. Adjacent zone districts consist of C3, office neighborhood commercial, M1, light manufacturing, and R2, suburban residential. There is approximately a distance of 820 feet from Malvern Avenue and about 1,000 feet from the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Expressway. And this section of Carpenter Dam Road has a large volume of traffic, as the most recent state estimates show approximately 12,000 vehicle trips per day at this location. The requested C3 Office Neighborhood Commercial District zoning would be compatible with the surrounding development and zoning, as well as an asset based on the proximity to Malvern and the expressway. The zoning change request implements an improved city plan. The future land use plan map designates this as an appropriate site for commercial office neighborhood type zoning. It is designated neighborhood commercial center. The Planning Commission on June 13th held a duly advertised meeting, called for testimony, and considered the record. They voted 8-0 with Commissioner Gerke recusing for conflict to recommend that the board approve an ordinance amending the zoning map from R2 suburban residential to C3 office neighborhood commercial district for approximately 1.25 acres of land located at 209 Carpenter Dam Road, because the change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding development and zoning and implements an adopted plan in the future land use plan map.
Any questions of Ms. Selman on this property or ordinance? Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your final item for the agenda is consider ordinance O-2421, an ordinance amending ordinance number 6458 pertaining to the property maintenance code of the city of Hot Springs and for other purposes.
Thank you, Bill. As the board will recall, you and the rest of the community have engaged in quite a bit of discussion about habitability standards within residential rental units, particularly apartments. As a result of that, the city manager convened an ad hoc committee that consisted of Daniel Brown, Dr. Nadine Jarman, Keyshawn Hicks, and Russell Thomas. There have been several meetings of this group with city manager and myself. The purpose of our gathering was to try to discuss and ultimately craft a proposed ordinance that would amend our existing property maintenance code that you adopted under Ordinance 6458. The amendments that have come out of that address housing standards for residential rentals, aiming at enhancing the tenants' protections and ensuring that we have a consistent community standard. The committee met as late as last Monday, I think it was, and unanimously agreed that the proposed ordinance be brought to you. The highlights of this ordinance deal with things that a landlord is obligated to do and things that need to be disclosed so that there is an informed decision on the tenant's behalf as to whether or not to occupy the premises. The required provisions are that the landlord must provide hot and cold running water, electricity, portable drinking water, sanitary sewer system, and compliant plumbing, functioning heating system, functional roof, and building envelope. Those issues that I just mentioned are implied habitability standards under state law, not required. We are making them required under the state law. It does provide that the state statute 1817-502 does not relieve a landlord from having to comply with any stricter applicable housing standard of a local government with jurisdiction. So that is you. In addition to those required housing standards, we are also proposing that this ordinance would require landlords to provide a signed and dated disclosure statement provided to the tenants before occupancy or lease renewal. That statement must indicate if air conditioning is present, and if so, who is responsible for its maintenance and utility costs. If the landlord is responsible for the air conditioning maintenance, that becomes a housing standard obligation. The standards do not apply to our licensed short-term residential rentals that are otherwise regulated through the STR ordinance, nor do they apply to single-family residential dwellings, nor do they void the terms of any valid written lease agreement that has been duly negotiated between the landlord and the tenant. In other words, if parties have agreed otherwise, their agreement is what is binding. Absent that, then the standards that would be proposed in this ordinance would come into play. There are affirmative defenses to the landlord that they can defend against noncompliance. Those would be compliance that was prevented by an act of God, utility failure, force majeure, epidemic, pandemic, other uncontrollable events, or if there has been a refusal by the tenant for the landlord to enter in order to cause the repairs to be made, or if the damage themselves were caused by the landlord or one of their occupants, visitors, something of that nature. What we are proposing is only to supplement the Arkansas statute 1817-502. It does not diminish the other rights that are available to the landlord or the tenant under state law. It merely provides for those required standards along with the disclosure statement. There will be a disclosure statement that will be attached to the ordinance, and the requirement would be that they execute one that is substantially similar to that, which would be part of the code. The fines associated with this are your regular general penalty fines and cost. It will repeal any ordinances that are in conflict with this. And again, the aim is to provide for additional protections to the tenants beyond what has been provided for in the state law, which essentially only allows them to terminate their lease. It doesn't provide them with the ability to get enforcement through our codes. Be happy to attempt to answer any questions that you might have now. I'm sure that there will be some next week.
Director Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. In our packets, could it be included, the rationale why single-family houses would not be included in this ordinance? If I understood you correctly, it was apartments and duplexes, those type, but not a house. And also, if they have, the lease includes appliances, if it would require working appliances.
It does not.
But it would include disclosure that they don't work.
Disclosure of air conditioning, not
But
other,
if
not
the,
other
if the
appliances.
lease includes appliances in an apartment and the refrigerator is not working, it doesn't require that disclosure?
It is not part of this ordinance.
The lease supersedes.
The lease supersedes. I can attempt to tell you in the packet the rationale that this committee discussed over the course of several meetings as to why, I don't know, I don't want to speak for the committee, but the consensus of the committee as we discussed it was to not include single-family dwellings. The rationale, I think, was that in those circumstances, typically a single-family house is a long-term lease. They're most likely going to have a written lease to begin with. The tenant is usually responsible for the utility cost associated with that rental, and so therefore the disclosure as to who's going to be responsible for it is not as prevalent.
Any additional questions?
And
You
I'll
know,
say that all the issues that we've dealt with as staff has been multifamily. We haven't, to my knowledge, had any issues with a single-family structure.
We will certainly invite the committee members to come, and if you have questions of them, they can speak on it. You know, your options are always to approve, deny, amend, or table. But this is, I don't know, we had 5 or 6 meetings over the course of several months, and this is.
And this was discussed several times back and forth.
It has been.
Very good. Well, this concludes the action items that will be formally addressed next Tuesday evening, July 6th at 6 p.m. right here at City Hall. And stay close by your chairs so we can move right into our work.